President-elect and former President, and Donald, congratulations.
Thank you.
And looking forward to having like we said, a smooth transition. Do everything we can to make sure you're accommodated, what you need. And we're going to get a chance to talk about some of that today. So
Good.
Welcome
Thank you
back.
very much. And thank you very much. And politics is tough. And it's, in many cases, not a very nice world, but it is a nice world today, and I appreciate it very much. And a transition that's so smooth, it'll be as smooth as it can get, and I very much appreciate that, Jim.
You're welcome. Thank you all.
Well, they do well if they can decipher a question out of that lot, but smiles for the two men. I think those initial comments, the only comments we'll get. I'll pause and see if they do respond to any of this. Well, as I expected, no further comment from the two leaders. You see a few stills photographers just getting their shots, but this is how it normally goes with these sorts of meetings in the Oval Office, where you get the reporters invited in, they spend a minute or so, they get the initial quotes, and then we possibly get more. We've seen the microphones set up outside of the White House. Just about anything is possible on a day like this. Donald Trump may come to those microphones outside of the White House. They are there ready. If he does, he may just get into his convoy of cars and head back to the airport, because that is what is planned, to head back to Andrews Air Base and get back on the plane and head back to Florida. So everything is possible, but last time I think the meeting went on for about an hour or so with Barack Obama and Donald Trump. Gary, you were watching that. Am I right? Was it a meeting of that length, or was it shorter?
It was 90 minutes, in fact, in 2016, which was 3 times as long as it was due to be. So there was clearly some substantive discussion, as we mentioned before, about North Korea. And as you say, the stakeout position is probably, 30 yards away from where I'm standing, perhaps. And there are some microphones there, and Donald Trump sometimes can't resist a microphone, so we'll see if he bothers, or whether he gets straight back in his car and goes straight back to the airport. So yes, not much to go on, to be honest, in those exchanges, was there? They were sitting by the fireplace in the Oval Office, that famous fireplace, this sort of FDR fireplace, if you like. Despite the fact that it's blazing sunshine out here, there seemed to be a roaring fire as well, didn't there? So we'll see what transpires from the actual meeting itself.
It makes a good picture, Gary. I suppose what his critics might point to, after what we saw in 2016, what we saw in 2020, and what we're seeing now in 2024, is that it's easy to be gracious if you win. Well, yeah, it is easy to be gracious if you win. And I think that is something that people have accused Donald Trump of in the past. We know that winning is incredibly important to him, not just in politics, but in everything, in his business life, in his personal transactions with people, that he has to be top dog. That is incredibly important to him. And so I think that's what you perhaps saw on display there today, the grace that comes through victory. And we'll see whether that grace continues into the White House itself, because certainly there are fears among some of his opponents that he will not be gracious towards his opponents after he gets back here, that he may pursue some of his opponents through the courts or through other means, that he may be less than gracious when it comes to handling issues of migrants and their welfare. All this is up for discussion. The sort of landscape has changed so much that it's really difficult to assess what is going to be politically possible, because all the rules have been broken over the last 8 years. There is no roadmap particularly for us at this time to judge what can and can't be done, what can and can't be tried, what can and can't be said. The world is a very different one.
Yes, it was interesting. I was talking to Edward Luce, who wrote a piece for the Financial Times in the last hour, which was headlined Trump and his mandate for retribution. So that is what he is expecting in the coming months. But aside from all of that and those groups he said that perhaps he will go after, he will need to deliver on the key planks of what won him this election. And essentially that means making ordinary Americans feel they have more dollars in their pockets. They will need to deliver on what they've said about the border, need to deliver on those key basic things that Americans are interested in.
I think that's right. I guess I was standing about 20 metres away from him last Tuesday evening, was it? When he said promises made are promises kept. So that is the promise he's made the American people. He has set some very high expectations, not least on the question of deportation, not least on the question of international trade tariffs across the board, not least on sort of refocusing America's environmental policies and its whole sort of foreign policy gambit, really. Ending the war in Ukraine on day one, ending the war in the Middle East at some point as well. All these things have been promised. So we will see what's doable and what's not doable. But the list of promises is substantive. On the question of inflation, it's interesting because, of course, inflation is right down now, just above 2%. And people clearly blamed Joe Biden and the Democrats for the period of high inflation back in 2022 when it was over 9%. In some ways, there was no way for them to combat the damage that had already been done to people's incomes, to their housing costs, to their grocery costs, to their gas costs, all these sort of things. So we'll see what Donald Trump... I mean, the one thing he's promised to do is to abolish tax on tips. So anyone who's been to America knows that the business of tipping people in the service sector, restaurants, bars, all those kinds of things is incredibly important. That's what gives people a living wage rather than their wages themselves. He's probably to take tax off that and tax off overtime. That will all have a cost on top of another huge tax cutting bill, which of course last time led to a rising deficit.
Gary, we have to leave it there for now, but thank you for taking me through the last hour or so as we see Donald Trump start that meeting with Joe Biden. These are the pictures from inside the Oval Office, the smiles, the handshakes, the couple of quotes with Donald Trump saying politics is tough, but it is a nice world today. He went on to say the transition will be as smooth as you can get, and Joe Biden saying you're welcome after being thanked by Donald Trump.